Don't go too far over to the left or right, otherwise you have the frame.
All right, everyone, thanks for coming. Welcome back to those of you who are here with us on Thursday. If everyone could just turn their phones on to vibrate or off. That'd be great. Thank you so much. So, come on in. So, happiness. Happiness is such a buzzword in today's culture. It's such a hot topic that it's one of the things that if you look statistically on news articles that are the most popular in today's world, happiness or derivatives, synonyms of happiness, are some of the most clicked on of any other article. Why? Why is it that happiness is a topic that is so interesting, that is so much of a buzzword, especially in today's culture? And secondly, is it possible that there's a formula for happiness that would apply to each one of us? Because each person here today has a different set of things that it takes for them to feel happy. Right? Some of us are aware of them, some of us are not. But is it possible there's a universal formula that would apply to each one of us? In short, yes, there is. We'll talk about that in a moment. What I'll share with you is that if you look at the research over the last 20 years, you'll see that prior to 20 years ago, there was a 17-to-1 ratio of negative research, meaning research done on all the things that are negative. How to be depressed, or what causes depression, what causes unwellness, what causes sickness, disease, unhappiness. 17 of those to every one study done on happiness and what helps people to feel positive and satisfied. In the last 20 years, there's been a shift. In those 20 years, we found out a number of things. We found out that two of the biggest myths were totally debunked. In this period of an information boom, we found out a number of things about what hasn't been working. In fact, in 1996, if you look at the statistics, you'll see that 5.5% of Americans were on antidepressants. 1996 was the year that AOL.com came out. Anyone remember AOL? Yeah? Still have it. Very nice. Does anyone remember dial-up internet?
Yes.
Dial-up internet? Remember that thing that, everyone get off the phone, I'm trying to get online, right? And then someone, of course, picks up the phone as you're trying to get online. And then what do they hear? It sounds like there's a chicken having a heart attack, right? Remember that sound? Right? It sounds terrible. So what are you thinking? Okay, so you're trying to get online, and you really get excited, because when this first thing came out, everyone's like, okay, we're going to get online. And no one in the whole block could be on the phone at that time when you're trying to get online. And then you get online, like the whole family comes and crowds around the computer, right? AOL.com, and then email, right? In the next 10 years following, 96 to 2005, there was the biggest technological boom in the history of people, right? In those 10 years, we shifted from having internet, email, smartphones. The precursor to smartphones came out. Precursor to Google Maps, YouTube, all those things by 2005 were around. Right? We had technology, one gadget, one thing, all the stuff, one after the next that came out in those 10 years. Right? Things that were created to make our lives easier, to make our lives simpler, to make things more smooth. The world was communicating faster than ever. Information was available at our fingertips. Right? Speakers could ask you at a class, hey, what does this mean? And you could just Google it and have the right answer, right? I know, because I've done that. It's a lot of fun in university or graduate school or college. It happens all the time. So in this information boom, when things were created to make things easier for us, what happened? Do you think antidepressant went up or down after those 10 years?
Up.
Why would it go up? Let me share with you another fact. In the last 50 years, global domestic product, GDP, which basically is a generic way of seeing how successful our economy is, increased by over 400% in the last 50 years, which means the economy has overall been on the rise. Right? Things have been getting better and better financially. Do you think that would have increased our happiness, decreased our stress, made things easier for us along with the technology boom? Raise your hand for yes. 5 people think so. The other 35 no. Right? So it wouldn't. Who are you saying it wouldn't be? I saw 5 for yes and 5 for no. Everyone else is
Stay
sleeping.
fine.
No. Okay. So the statistics show, the research has shown that as GDP, as the economy went up, and as technology improved, antidepressants doubled in those 10 years. Which means that if you had about 5.5% of Americans, let's say 300 million Americans, that's about 15 million plus. You went from 15 million to over 30 million. Things got easier, there was more stuff, more resources, things were smoother, faster, better, more convenient. What happened? We became unhappier as a country. Interesting. So the first myth is that people often think that if there's a problem, if you simply remove that problem, then you'll get what you want. For example, let's say happiness is a spectrum, right? So if happiness is all the way on one side, what would you say is on the other side? What? Sadness, okay.
Problem.
Pressure?
Depression.
Or depression. Indifference, interesting. Okay. So we have a few answers. We're going to choose depression because usually that's considered to be the two extremes, right? Some people say indifference is a form of depression, but understandable. So happiness and then depression, right? The two extremes. So if you have someone who's depressed, you give them antidepressants to remove that depression, right? You're simply removing the problem. If you remove their depression, do they become happy or are they no longer depressed? They're no longer depressed. So now they go from depressed to no longer depressed, but it doesn't solve the problem. You remove the problem, but it doesn't make them happy. Right? Exactly. It doesn't work like that. Anxiety.
One thing you said, well, now we have antidepressants and more people taking antidepressants.
Yes.
However, if you go back 20, 30 years, let's say you have Prozac.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm
Now
talking about.
you have 20 different antidepressants out there.
Right.
Each one is more specific and works better. So because they're taking more antidepressants, doesn't mean that they're really taking more antidepressants.
Okay. Thank you. We can talk about that afterwards. Okay. Thank you. Anxiety, not treated by antidepressants. Right? So if you have anxiety, a spectrum of anxiety, on one side you have anxiety, what would you say is the other side?
Tranquility.
Tranquility, okay. Anyone else? What's on the opposite side? Excitement, okay. Thank you, Ellie. Anyone else? Right? What? Pleasure. Okay, anxiety and pleasure, two extremes. So the research uses the word optimism. So you have anxiety on one side, you have optimism on the other. If you give someone something, you help them remove their anxiety, remove the problem, does that help them become an optimist or give them pleasure? Or do they no longer have anxiety?
No longer have anxiety.
So by removing the problem, you're not actually giving them the solution. You're not actually giving them what they want, right? Which is really, we want the feelings of positive feelings. So the happiness that people are after is not being treated by the typical facets, the typical approaches. Medication's not doing it, but we see more and more people doing the things, taking medication, seeing opportunity in what isn't working. So what does work? What do the happiest people in the world do on a consistent basis that despite whatever is going on in life, they're able to consistently feel happy at a high level? And what do they all have in common?
Gratitude.
Yes, that's one of the things. Thank you. So, okay. So I'm going to have some audience participation. There's going to be quite a bit of it, but I'm just trying to kind of build a case, and I'm getting a little bit thrown off. So I'm just going to try to focus. But I do love the participation. We'll do a little bit here. Let's do something now. Okay, if you think, right, this is a poll done across America. The questions were as follows. If you believe that money buys happiness, right, having more money will buy happiness, raise your hands. Right, so the fact that I asked that question tells everyone, well, okay, I know what the right answer is because he's asking the question, right? So this isn't really a question for you. If you know someone that thinks that money buys happiness, raise your hands.
Lots of people that think that.
Now, if you know someone,
We used to think that.
you used to think that, right? This is all prior, in the last 20 years, this has started to change. But if you know someone who has a lot of money and is still not happy, raise your hand. Okay. If you know someone who does not have a lot of money and they still seem to be happy, raise your hand. Keep your hands up. Okay. So does money buy happiness? Yes or no?
No.
No. But I know you're thinking, right? But I know that I'm different. Like, if you give me your money, I'll be happy. Let's try it and we'll see how it goes, right? People who don't think money buys happiness, they don't know where to shop, right? we have these beliefs, and oftentimes we're not even aware of these beliefs. But I want to share with you something that can help shift that help us become aware of what it is, what are the nuances in our lives, very simple formula to help bring this to awareness. So you ready? You ready for the formula for happiness? Okay. LC equals BP. Got it? Okay, great. Next topic. Okay. Our life conditions, when the circumstances in our lives equal the blueprint that we have in our lives, the expectations, the way that we think how life should be, when those two are the same, we're happy. Right? But when they're not the same, there's a breakdown in the happiness. Right? When the things that we can't control, whenever life gives to us, is the same as how we think life should be, it's great. Right? It's a great day. And as long as life is going that way, it's fantastic. But what happens when life isn't like that? What happens when our LC, our life conditions, do not equal our blueprint?
Not happy.
Right?
I would say that 9 times out of 10, what happens is not what I expected.
Not what I expected, right? So this formula is very infrequently equal, right? If, by the way, the formula for suffering, right, is actually when life conditions do not equal the blueprint and you believe that you are powerless to change it, right? To feel that you are stuck in a place that's unhappy and you feel like there's nothing you can do about it, that's what creates suffering. Everyone with me?
Yes.
Right? That's a nuance. A lot of people don't realize that powerlessness is something that's so huge, and we're going to talk about that. So the class today is predicated on 3 principles that create happiness, and this is called the happiness triad. Okay? The first one is focus. What we focus on. Second one is physiology. The third one is language. Right? What we focus on determines how we feel, but so does our physiology, and so does the language you use to describe our experience. All 3 of them together, right, create this triangle back and forth that will determine our experience in life and the quality of happiness we have. Those 3 things, we'll talk about a little bit of each one of them, but those 3 are exactly what the people who are in the world are happiness. They understand how each one affects their happiness, and they understand how to use it. And I hope that I can impart on each of you something that you can take away, something practical that can improve your triangle, right? Your triangle of happiness. Okay. There was a little girl, 5 years old, sleeping in her bedroom, middle of the night. Mother wakes up to the sound of booming thunderstorm. Thunder, lightning, flashes, you know the kind. The house is shaking. Mom jumps out of bed. She runs downstairs to check on her little girl. She opens the door, sees the little girl is not in the bed. It's really worse. She runs downstairs, looks around the house, doesn't see her little daughter. Runs back upstairs, sees their daughter is sitting in the room. Boom! Another flash of lightning and thunder. She goes into the room, sees that her little girl is sitting right there on the windowsill. The window's wide open. And she says, Annie, what are you doing? Don't you realize how dangerous this is? Don't you understand what could happen if you fall out that window? It's dangerous outside. She goes, Mom. And suddenly another bolt of lightning and thunder. And she's just like smiling, looking at this thunderstorm. She says, Annie, what are you doing? Don't you realize what could happen? And she says, Mommy, don't you understand? I think God's trying to take my picture. What was the mother focusing on? She was focusing on everything that could go wrong. When she jumped out of bed, was her heart racing? Was her shoulders back and relaxed and just, oh, I wonder how Annie's doing? Or she like, oh my gosh, right? Shoulders up, crunched forward, running, huffing, puffing, right? Breathing really fast. Was her physiology affected by it? Was her language affected? What was she saying? Do you realize? What are you doing? Do you know what could go wrong? What was her little girl focusing on? Look at this opportunity. Wow, I feel so relaxed. I can just sit on my windowsill with my legs hanging out the window. Because you know why? How do I describe the situation? God's trying to take my picture. I'm getting a profile picture with God. Right? Focus, physiology, and feeling. The triad of happiness. Okay. So, focus equals feeling. Okay. Many times in our lives, we don't think about it, right? But the way that we interpret a situation, the meaning that we give to something, will often determine how we feel about it. Okay, so let me give you an example. when we were in 96, right, those 10 years, 2005 to 96, the way that people interpreted this was there's more that I can have and there's more that I can do, and they saw less opportunity to just be able to enjoy it. The way that they processed it, this is what they found in research, the way that they processed that new opportunity was, I now have more that I can do because I can. Not realizing if I just focus on what I have, if I focus on what I can do, and see the good in what is, rather than always feeling like there's more that has to fill it up. Does that make sense? Always feeling like there's more, I need the next thing. This is why, by the way, Apple figured this out, and they always realized every year around the same time, we're going to release a new product. Now, some people say it's worth it, some people don't. We're not here to discuss whether it's worth it or not, right? Everyone has the determination. But they realize that if people always feel there's something better, then they'll feel that what they have right now is not as good, or it's not good enough, right? So marketers know that an attitude of gratitude, right, is their biggest enemy. Because if people are happy with what they have, they're not going to buy the next thing, right? So gratitude, this is one of the things I teach my clients. I call it the high five exercise. When we focus on something that's going well, when we see what actually is going the way we want it to, we actually start to see the other things in our lives also going the way that we want it to. When we focus on the problem, we tend to notice more of it. Has anyone here ever bought a car? Raise a hand. Anyone here ever bought a car? Now, after you bought that car, did you ever notice that same car all of a sudden appearing all over the place? I see a lot of heads nodding. Right? Why is that? The cars weren't there before? All of a sudden you bought the car and 40 other people bought it at the same exact moment? As you're driving home for the next week, you'll notice that car all in your neighborhood, at the supermarket. Why is it that all of a sudden you start to notice that car everywhere when it's been there the whole time? Right? Because your focus. Because your mind is now focused on something what is. And as you begin to notice what is, the same thing happens, by the way, with positive thinking. When you think in a way, when you see things in a good light, you start to notice it in other places. Right? I have a couple who were fighting for 8 years. 8 years of fighting. Back and forth, back and forth. Very interesting story. But in short, it came down to something happened, right? Their life experience, their conditions didn't equal their blueprint. And one thing after the next, they met one challenge after the next. They started noticing all the things that weren't going right. And they forgot about all the things that were going right. The high five exercise changed their marriage. 8 years of fighting, 8 years of counseling and therapy and this exercise, they did this consistently for a month. And they said after that month, I felt more in love with my partner than I did before we even got married. Because I noticed all that was going right. And I realized with all of that, everything that's going wrong was also part of what was right. Whoa, that was really cool to hear, right? So, there was a little boy, midsummer day, and takes his little bat, his baseball, he steps onto the field, and it was beautiful, freshly cut grass. You could smell the freshly cut grass. You could feel the breeze, the warm summer breeze, clear blue skies. You could feel the warmth of the sunshine beating down on him. It was a perfect day. And he gets up to the mound and takes his ball, picks up the ball, throws it up in the air, and he swings. Whoosh! Strike one. But this boy had a lot of belief in himself. He was really, really excited about this. And he said, you know what? I don't care if I was strike one. I'll tell you what. I'm going to start over. And as he decided to do that, he raised his arms up and he said, I'm the best hitter in the world! Right? So excited. So he bends down, picks up the ball, throws it up again, swings, whoosh, strike. Misses, totally misses. Unfazed, he bends down the third time, picks up the ball, throws it up, whoosh, as hard as he can. Swing and a miss. Strike three. So in that moment, most of us, how would we be feeling? Probably not so good. Because if we are the best hitter in the world, how could we just strike out like that? We would have sure hit the ball 3 times. Right? So how is it that we can respond to something when, as a little boy, it didn't go his way? So instead of walking off the field devastated in that moment, feeling negative about who he is and how life isn't matching up to that. He bends down, picks up the ball, he picks up the bat, he picks his arm up, and he screams out to the imaginary audience, "I'm the greatest pitcher in the world!" A shift in focus, so subtle, the language he uses, the focus he has, made all the difference. Now let me ask you a question. If he was walking off the field that day, and he was thinking about how he's the greatest hitter in the world, and he just struck himself out, how do you think he'd be walking off the field? Chin up, arms back, standing tall? No? How would he be standing? Shoulders forward, kind of slumped down a little bit? Yeah? No? Not
Yes.
sure?
Yes.
Do you think his voice would be super proud, super loud, strong, powerful? Or would he kind of be speaking like this? Yeah, the second one? Interesting. What? Depressed. Interesting. Do you think that his heart would be beating really fast with excitement? Or do you think he would kind of be beating really slow? Kind of this low energy. Kind of this, like the weight of the world is holding on his shoulders. Right?
Yes.
Interesting. So his physiology, his posture, his breathing, his heart rate is all affected by his focus, by the meaning he's giving to what just happened. Okay. The language. He gets in the car that day, and he's talking to his mom about what just happened on the baseball field. Do you think he's going to describe it differently if he's the greatest pitcher versus the greatest hitter?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Focus, physiology, and language. Okay. So, by the way, baseball is a great sport for this example because if someone in baseball, right, or someone in life, 70% of the time they fail, would you say that that's a failure? Right, 70% of the time, 7 out of every 10 times they do something, they fail miserably. They get nothing done. They don't get the business deal, they don't get the answer they want, they don't get whatever it is they desire from someone else. Would you say that that's a failure? Raise your hands. 70% of the time? The other percent are not sure.
And they rush them.
So let me ask you, in baseball, if someone fails 70% of the time, that means that 30% of the time, they get the hit, they get something right. Batting average of 300, is that a ticket to the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Batting average of 300 means that 30% of the time you got it right, 70% of the time in life. 70% of every opportunity you were given, you failed. But still, it's a ticket to the Hall of Fame. Wow. What a shift. What a way to think about things in a different way. Right? Because in life, more often we get 70% of the time not what we want, and 30% of the time we get what we want, or we achieve what we want. But remembering that's a ticket to the Hall of Fame. Wow, what a different focus. So I want to share, there's a concept that one of the ways, going back to the happiness, that we don't get what we want is when we feel that we can't change, we don't have the ability to change what we want, and we feel that we stop ourselves because there's a fear of doing something. For example, let's say we want a raise, we want different hours, we want a date, we want to have a better setup, we want to have a conversation with someone. But we want whatever it is in our lives. We want to change our life conditions that we're unhappy with. So we want to do something to make our expectations better. We want to be proactive to improve our lives. Whatever it is that we're unhappy with. Whether it's an employee, a coworker, a boss, any situation. Right? One of the main things that stop people is a fear of rejection. The fear of the word no. Right? So I want to share with you a principle I share with many of my clients, which is that rejection is actually totally made up. I see a lot of heads turning. What? Rejection is totally made up. I'll give you an example. Aaron, our own, asks Sarah on a date. Dinner date. Sarah, will you go with me on a dinner date? Or I'll ask this guy, Perry. Perry, will you go to dinner with me?
Of course.
No, you're supposed to say no.
Never.
Never. There you go. Right? So Aaron asks Sarah on a dinner date. She says no. So what happens? He just got rejected. Now rejection is actually totally fake. Why? Because if you think about it, before he asked Sarah on the date, he didn't have a date with Sarah. Now that he has Sarah on a date, he still doesn't have a date with Sarah. So really, nothing changed. Everything stayed the same. Right? The only thing that changed is if he goes into his head and tells himself, see, Mom was right, you're a total loser, you'll be single forever. Right? That message, that language, if he goes in his mind, allows himself to think that, that's where the pain of rejection, that's the fear comes up. I'll give you another example. I had a client who, for 30 years, wanted to get into Harvard graduate school. 30 years. And she said, when I got the rejection letter, I was devastated because I wanted to get into graduate school. I tried everything I could. I got the letters and this, everything. Got rejected. So I asked her, I said, well, what does that rejection mean? And she basically said, I thought in that moment that anything I wanted to do in life, whatever I wanted in my career, straight out the window. I said, well, you spent 30 years not being in Harvard. So you know very well how not to be in Harvard. So why is this so difficult? Right? Nothing changed. Before she wasn't in Harvard, she's still not in Harvard. The only thing that shifted is the message, the meaning that she assigned to what happened. The way that she spoke about it in her own head. That is the only thing that changed, and that created her entire emotion from it. Focus. Now let's talk about physiology. So there's a story of a guy who was a worker in a railroad company. 30 years old, Nick Saltzman, father of two, husband, worked with all of his friends at the railroad company. This is a true story. And at the end of a working day in the middle of the summer, they were let out early. Right? The crew was able to go home an hour early because one of their supervisors was off duty. Now, Nick was a hard worker. So he went to do one last check on all of the railroad cars. And while he was doing that, he got locked in to one of the refrigerator cars. And he realized that everyone had gone home. So he's banging on the door, trying to get someone's attention, shouting at the top of his voice. No one can hear him. He's banging, he's going hoarse, and he realizes, I don't know, this isn't looking too bright, because they're not coming back until tomorrow. And he realizes, he starts thinking, oh my gosh, this is freezing, right? If I stay in here, this refrigerator car overnight, I'll freeze to death. So what he does is he takes a knife and he carves into the wooden floor a message to his family. Because he at least wanted them to know what happened to him. So the message he carved into the wood was, it is so cold in here, my body can't take it anymore. If I could only fall asleep right now, these might be my last words. Those are the words he carved in. The next morning, his friends came in. They opened the refrigerator car, and they found Nick lying flat on the car, dead. Nick had actually killed himself by his own beliefs, his thoughts. This is a true story. You can look it up. Google Nick Saltzman railroad death. It was syndicated by national newspapers about 40 years ago. True story. With our own thoughts are so powerful, they directly impact our body, and they can be the difference between life and death. Here's an amazing story. When I heard this, it blew me away. Why? Do you think if he thought something different, it would have been different? Do you think he would have had a different outcome? Possibly. But here's the kicker. When they opened that door, they saw that the refrigerator unit was inoperative. It was actually broken. And the thermostat on the unit read 55 degrees Fahrenheit. He thought it was freezing. Not only that, but when they did the autopsy, the scientific autopsy on Nick's body, the doctors found every physical sign of freezing to death. Organs, the body, the blood, every single physical sign. Nick killed himself by his own thoughts. His body froze to death from what he had in here, rather than what was going on around him. Powerful. The way that we carry ourselves, just like the little baseball boy, the way that we think about things, we're not always aware of it, but you might notice